'Cause I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the deserts bare, man. I've breathed the mountain air, man. I've travelled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere. Been to Tullamore, Seymour, Lismore, Mooloolaba, Nambour, Roochdore, Kilmore, Moorillaba, Birdville, Emmaville, Wallaville, Connemara, Connemara, Strathroy, Proserpine, Allerdale, Darwin, Gingin, Lillaquen, Muckdilla,
Bathurst, isn't it?
Cumberland, Ramakiller. I've been everywhere, man.
Yeah. Poor old Lucky. Never quite got there. Can't be terribly lucky. I've been to Bathurst. It's a nice place. And I'll tell you what you'll find if you go to Bathurst, Rob, you'll find Ashley Bland, who is a resident of the aforementioned town. Good morning, Ashley.
Yes, good morning. How are you fine, gentlemen, today?
Doing very well, thanks indeed. Well, we always start with a hard question first. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Where's Bathurst?
It is about 201 kilometres on the road sign west of Sydney. So straight over the sandstone curtain, as we call it, and almost a straight line west. And then further north, you've got places like Mudgee. Further west again is Orange, another 50-odd K. And then another, say, 200 K from that out to Dubbo.
Now, normally our guests on this segment, Ashley, have a really big task of convincing the viewers, listeners,
we don't have many viewers.
Why we would go to your place and what's good about your place. But I don't care what you have got to say this morning. Nothing is going to alter the fact that Bathurst is famous for a car race, and I guess there's a lot more to it. But using that as a base, what happens on the other 362 days of the year when the racing world of Australia descends upon your town?
Well, I'd have to say it's less than 362 days because the track is used quite a lot, and it's been interesting over time to watch that change. So, yes, of course, the Bathurst 1000 remains a real signature event, but there are now a whole host of events, and I think you'll find almost every second weekend at least part of the track is closed. There's hill climbs, and then there's also, it seems to be around 4 or 5 major events per year. So we've just had an international race event here, the 12-hour, and that's really interesting because, you know, the town used to be full of Fords and Holdens, you know, with the V8, and then when you get those international race circuits in, you know, my mum was saying the other day she was filling up a car, and then in comes a Ferrari, and then in comes a Corvette.
And she thought Ashley's out getting his cars organised again.
Right, oh, come on, son, can you stop taking the Ferrari to store?
It's a bit over the top, really.
The racetrack is definitely a great attraction for the town, and even like you go out there in the morning and there's heaps of people walking and running around it. There are, you know, there's a physical challenge to run around the mountain, and there's no doubt that it's a really special place because it's always been special to the Wiradjuri people here, and they've worked hard over recent years with the rest of the community, it must be said, to have a dual naming convention put in place. So now the mountain is locally known as Wahlu, which is its traditional name, and then the racing circuit and all that is Mount Panorama. So most people now talk about it as Mount Panorama Wahlu.
Ashley, it's interesting you talked about the aura of the place. I certainly grew up, I've never been a petrol head, but you grew up in the era where it was Ford v Holden back in the Moffat Brock days, and that Sunday was sacrilegious. It was a box of beer and a television, and you never moved. And even though I wasn't necessarily interested, you get caught up. But I've got to tell you, when I drove through your town on the way to Sydney from Orange, and I drove that track, there's something quite eerie and awe-inspiring around it. Even though you're going at 60 k's an hour maximum, it has got something about it because of the history attached.
Look, it certainly does, and I actually have a family connection to that. My great-uncle raced in 1939, I think, or 38 before the war, just after it was sort of declared as a tourist circuit. And then post-war, when the racing started up again, he was one of the racers that went around Bathurst and other tracks. And look, it's certainly that. You know, there's a reason these things develop the mystique, and if you just walk the track, you go, oh my goodness, let alone driving it, you realise that it is actually really challenging, and then it has that sort of, you know, dare I say, spiritual significance to a wide range of people. And, you know, interestingly, there was a really quite hotly fought debate recently in Bathurst around whether to build a go-kart track on the top of Mount Panorama Wahlu, and it was really strongly argued by the community to say, well, no, this is a community space. This is not just for allowed sort of go-kart. This is also for people just to enjoy. And ultimately it fell on the side of, even though it's a racing track, it sort of fell on the side of the community saying, yeah, no, we'll just leave the mountain clear, thanks, so people can come up and camp for the race and enjoy that without necessarily having a commercial activity up there. But yeah, there's no doubt it's a significant part of town, but it's certainly not the only part. You know, and I, like all around here, there's a great lot of little villages to drive out to, and you know, Matt Moran, the sort of famous chef, he's bought the Rockley pub, which is say 25 minutes out of town, and so now people jet out there for their flash, you know, fish and chips and a beer or whatever, and same with Paranar and various. You know, there's a lot of little villages. Safala is a famous village near where gold was first found. So right back to the 1850s in terms of European heritage, there's a lot to explore in the region that's not the racing track. And there's also now, like, we're quite well renowned for having some pretty spectacular museums. It's a real sporting centre, so there are, like, you know, there's always something on. There's always, you know, mums and dads and kids coming from, you know, football, soccer, cricket, tennis, you know, whatever carnival. So there's a lot more to Bathurst than just the racetrack.
And you've convinced us. I have been to Bathurst several times, and it's a great little town. I'm very pleased with it. One thing I did want to just touch on briefly before we have to say goodbye, you work as a director, or not work as, you are part of an organisation as a director of SEGRA, Sustainable Economic Growth in Regional Australia. There's a very fine podcast called SEGRA Talks, I believe, that you and I might have had something to do during the week.
Possibly.
Just tell us a little bit about SEGRA and the role it plays in regional Australia.
Well, I guess, you know, you have to go back to the beginning, and there's a whole heap of people who, like me, I'm a bit of a Johnny-come-lately, but, you know, going back 25 years when it started, Kate Charters and a whole heap of others were really passionate about regional Australia and the voice of the regions not necessarily being heard. And I guess you could say that's the role of, you know, the country or what became the National Party. But, you know, then you're into politics. So, like, well, what about what the people say and the scientists say? And so there was an organisation or a movement really established that just sort of once a year brought a whole heap of people together who were passionate about regional Australia to say what's going on, you know, what's important, what do we need to focus on, what knowledge can we share? And it turned out that it sort of hit a bit of a nerve, and it's become quite a thing really right across Australia. And each year it sort of gave a voice to Parliament, both state and federal. There'd be a communique out of the get-together which said, this is what's important in regional Australia. And so it's a kind of great intelligence gathering and sharing event. And yeah, look, I'm a great advocate for the bush. I mean, I love being in the city, but I love seeing it in the revision mirror, you know, when I come home. And so it just became. I went to it, and it sort of blew my mind. I just went, oh my God, this is fantastic. These are my people talking about interesting stuff, and you know, and so I pestered them until I became involved, and am now a director, which is great.
We had to do that because I think the boss is listening, and she was going to tell people on the SEGRA website that we were on. So we thought we'd better give her a bit of a plug. Ashley, always good to catch up, and congratulations on us getting through an entire interview without our phones dropping out. But we've had 4 conversations this week, and every time the phone's broken up. So that's good. Pretty happy with that.
But what was funny about one of those, though, was that, you know, we complain about our communications in the bush, but for one of those calls, I was in King's Cross, like I was right in the middle of Sydney, and I could not get connectivity. It was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's an outstanding piece of technology that we're using, isn't it? But thanks for being part of this, and if people are in Bathurst, look up Ashley Bland and he'll shake your hand or something. Thanks for joining us on Regional Roundup.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashley. Best wishes with your projects.